All right. We're recording? Good. All right. So I've had several different plans and ideas for how I wanted to do this video, and I've thrown them all out. So here we are, no script, whatever. We're going to talk about modes today. Okay, specifically we're going to talk about how to use modes in beat making. So I'm going to break things down in a very particular but very simple way. And I'm going to show you a lot in the context of like MIDI and stuff, obviously. But first thing I'm going to do is drag down a little visual aid from the Wikipedias. Basically, what a mode is, if you break everything down and reduce it to just the major scale as your starting point, which is just... These are the names of all the different modes, and don't get too caught up. It's just a lot of memorization, basically. The way you use them is the important part. But the major scale, as you know it, is called the Ionian mode. And I guess think of each of these bars as so each of these different points is a note. So these are the gaps between the notes, the intervals. So you build a major scale by going a whole step, a half step, and then a whole step, half step. And what that looks like in the convenience of the C major scale is all the white notes. So I'll roll this down a little bit. You end up with the major scale. Yeah. So you have the whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And if you think of everything just in terms of intervals and things, all of the scales actually, all of the modes actually begin to come from just that major scale and the motions that happen around it, basically. Because this note and this note are both C's. They are the same note, so these are the only notes that are on the scale, and then this one being the octave. Just to complicate things. But how each of the different modes works, if I drag this down, the visual does a good job of showing it. Basically, each mode is just a different starting point across the major scale. So if we start on that first note, on that C, it is the Ionian mode. If we start on the second note, we have the whole step first, and then a half step immediately after gives a different sound, creating the Dorian mode, and then Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. If you do a deep dive, you can find all kinds of different functions of each of the different modes. But as you'll kind of see in a second, it just changes the character of everything. So if we just let the MIDI do its thing, here we're in the Ionian, the major scale. And if we want to move to the Dorian mode, the next one, the easiest way to do it is... Let's see. Well, I guess even easier. Yeah, so basically, we are just going to move this up so that if the scale were to keep going, that would be the next note. And then if we just start and keep all the notes where they are, your ear is just going to hear it still as the major scale, but going up to a different note because your ear locks into the major scale very quickly and readily. That's what makes it such a good home base in a lot of ways, on top of the way it pans out on the C scale, making it so convenient. But if we drag then everything back down to C, you'll hear how it just has a different flavor from the regular major scale. And we can continue to do that. So here there's another whole step. So we'll go up a whole step, drag those over, and you don't have to do it in this complicated way. You can just, I mean, if you go to Wikipedia and look at that that chart, you can build one of these scales at the beginning and then figure out what notes need to be where or whatever, or use the handy quantizing features in any of your DAWs, whatever. There are options. But in general, this is what you're doing with the different modes. So that is Phrygian. You'll hear that a lot in like metal music and stuff like that when you want something darker. A little bit more cinematic. What is next? Lydian. So here we'll just go up a half step above. And again, that one starts to sound major again. The next one is also going to sound really major. Yeah, so the next one's also going to sound very major. The way they kind of take shape, everything, the actual kind of, I guess, flavors of what they're going to stick with. The flavor of each different mode depends on where the half steps are and where these half steps fall across the scale. Because the half steps really define the more brooding and emotional sounds in the scale. The scales are the way that you sort of connotate a different sound is usually because of the gap between the notes. Those two notes, just play them as a dyad. Like these two notes have a different feel. Woo. Now what am I doing? These two notes have a different feel when played together than... We'll do these two notes, for example. You can hear that one because it is more of an odd number of like an odd interval spacing away. It has a bit more dissonance, a little bit more... It's just a little bit more complex and a little bit more interesting. Let's see, where are we on? Mixolydian, and we'll go up one more. And we're almost through all of them. Yeah, we're almost through all of the different modes, but this next one is another noteworthy one because it is the minor scale, like the natural minor scale. When something's labeled as B minor, this is the minor scale that they're almost always talking about. And it is just the sixth mode, the Aeolian mode of the major scale. So really, even the minor scale and the major scale are just the same thing. You can basically derive most, if not all, music theory from the major scale and modifications to it. At least in terms of like Western classical music theory and then like Western contemporary music. Alright, and then this would be the last one. This one, especially the Locrian mode, is kind of the most dissonant because where these half steps fall are all the notes that your ear would expect to be musical jumps, and then, or I guess like more consonant jumps, and then kind of goes from there. But you'll notice that like once you start to build chords from these different modes, and that's a whole another can of worms. But like just in general, you'll build a chord out of like the 1, 3, and 5, basically. 4, 5. And the different modes will give you different chord structures based on where they are through the rotation of the scale, basically. And so that is the sort of like root position chord of the Locrian mode, which is, you know, where a lot of that dissonance and difficulty with like composing stuff that doesn't just sound like dark and heavy using Locrian comes from. But if you just think of everything in terms of the major scale and think of the modes as just rotations around the major scale, as if you were running around a like a baseball diamond, and instead of stopping at home base, you just kept running, and based on which base you started on, it just changed, you know, what it was like to run around the different bases. You could start on the second base, you could start on the third base, you could start on fourth base and just run. But, you know, that's really how you can use modes, and the more you play with them, the more you'll develop an ear for it. Basically, once you have the concept down, the rest of it is just playing with them and memorizing. And just the best way to memorize it is just to screw around and find out what sounds you can make and what you can make happen. So yeah, I guess that's basically all I wanted to say with that. But it's a lot of just, it's music, so it's just experiment, have fun, play around. There's nothing wrong you can do. Try shifting notes one way or another. Anything that you can do, anything that you can think to do, there's a name for it. That's what music theory is it's just the naming convention of everything you can possibly think to do with music. And there's bound to be a name out there for something that you can think to do. So just have fun, make sounds, and when you break what you think is a rule, look into it, and you'll learn the name of the exceptions and learn a bunch from it. Yeah. So yeah, I hope this was helpful to some people. But yeah, I don't know. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Give me comments. Give me feedback. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what I'm doing right. I don't know. Whatever. Get out of here. Bye.